Good evening, everybody. This is Omar Serrata with the Tilted Lawyer podcast. I am joined by Brad and Bruce from Oregon, my side piece. Brad is my side piece. Bruce is there's a lot more layers to Bruce.
I'm a radical free agent.
He's a free agent for sure. We got a lot to talk about today. First and foremost, we have an update on the Laura Owens case. There's been enough of you who have been requesting it, and so I'm here to talk about the notice of appeal and what I think about it and the prospects of it going forward. Secondarily, we're going to have some fun and talk about the debate performances from the two candidates from the perspective of an undecided voter such as myself. I don't think that either of you two are undecided, but I'm still not decided. I was going to be decided, but then I changed my mind. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait probably till the end of October before I endorse anybody. And even then, I might not tell you who I'm endorsing. So
you're going to be in the booth with the pencil and erasing and writing it, and then erasing and writing, erasing.
They're going to talk about hanging Chads again because his punch card won't scan properly.
They're going to be tilted Chads.
Tilted Chads. All right, folks. Well, we're going to get started. If you want to stick around, it's going to be a good one. That did not go how I hoped it was going to sound. You know what I need? I need like a soundboard engineer. Where's Dominic? I forgot to tell Dominic that I'm going live. It's not his fault for not being here tonight. You know what? I'm going to just so he's aware. I knew I forgot to do something before we started.
Whoops.
Hey, Dominic. I roasted him pretty bad on our last Family Law After Dark.
Oh, no.
With his blonde tips. It's like, what is that, buddy? I'm live right now. Okay. Now we'll see if he pops in or not. Okay. So let's get
the frosted tips are coming back. Does that mean the bell bottoms are coming back?
Oof. The bell bottoms they've gone, and then they came back like in the early 90s, and then they left again, and then they came back again.
Yeah.
What is it with our fascination with I don't know, wavy, I was going to say tips, like pants cuffs?
I like them.
I think it's whenever the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles come into season, then bell bottoms come back, and then when they leave, bell bottoms go with.
Oh, I see.
All right.
It's not like correlated with pumpkin spice latte or anything.
No.
I promised that I'm not going to read the notice of appeal word for word because plenty of folks have done that. And honestly, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Why can't I? Oh, because I got to do the window thing. Yeah. All right. So now it is up, and I'm going to make it bigger. But this is it. So this is the notice of appeal. The reason why I hadn't covered it before is because the notice of appeal is literally nothing more than a notice to the world, to anybody interested in the case, to let it be known that Laura Owens intends to proceed on appeal on the following issues. Usually, and David Gingras even said this in a tweet, a notice of appeal is like a page long, but he couldn't help himself. And his notice of appeal just happens to be 3, 4, 5 pages long. 5 pages long. Is that normal? No, it's not. Is it fine? Yeah, it's fine. Except if you notice, he did file an amended notice of appeal because he screwed up the timing of the final judgment on the original one. There's not a whole lot of beef to this, but I'll get through some of the highlights just for entertainment purposes. So as it begins, he states a lot of statutes, talks about Laura Owens. If you're unfamiliar and you're listening to this podcast, you're like, who in the hell is Laura Owens? She is a woman who very famously now, or very infamously, faked a twin pregnancy with The Bachelor. Was he a candidate or like the winner of The Bachelor? I forget. Or like
he was the guy.
He was the lead of the show.
The show was based around him, The Bachelor.
Yeah.
She had a romantic entanglement with this guy for a spell. They met in the course of a business proposition regarding real estate. Inevitably, she wound up at his place. Oral sex ensued. And on the basis of that one oral encounter, I'm saying it definitively now because it's been argued in trial and decisions have been made. She claimed that she was pregnant. She faked pregnancy tests. She admitted to faking pregnancy tests. She very famously got gobsmacked in a cross-examination from Eckerd's attorneys, where she just broke down into a full-on temper tantrum. Her lawyer, who is continuing to represent her here in this appeal, David Gingras, has brought it upon himself to create these appealable issues. Now, he didn't create them so much as he manufactured them. All of the stuff that he was doing with trying to get rid of Judge Mata and all those other bullshit motions that he threw out there was all by design, I believe, to set the stage for an appeal. Now, the nature of this is you file a notice of appeal. You usually have somewhere like 60 to 90 days, depending on whatever the local rules are, to prepare your appellate brief. The appellate brief is limited to the evidence that was presented in the underlying case. And so you can't introduce new evidence. The whole purpose of the appeal is to say that, hey, there was legal inconsistencies here. The judge got it wrong because of either some legal mistake or some abuse of discretion. That's what this is. And so this is just an announcement that, yeah, we're going forward on the appeal. The actual appeal itself will be forthcoming within, I don't know, maybe by the end of the year, maybe not. It really just depends on how quick Gingras is to get it out. We will see. So the appeal starts off, the notice of appeal, with these statutes, and he's specifically appealing what is this? Arizona Court of Appeals from the final judgment entitled Order Regarding Application for Attorney Fees and Costs. He was ordered to pay, or he being Laura Owens was ordered to pay something like $150,000 plus dollars.
149,000 is what it came out to.
Yeah. The results of litigating over the course of nearly a year, this bullshit paternity case that she brought on. She opens up a paternity case, trying to coerce Eckerd into a relationship. I can't recount. I'm trying to summarize it, but if I go into any detail, we're going to go down to a whole rabbit hole. There's plenty of videos out there that I've done. I know that Brad's done. I know that Bruce has done. If you want the inside scoop on anything related to the Eckerd case, I think Bruce is the guy for the behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, it was a crazy case. So here we are. They're specifically appealing that order for application for attorney fees and costs dated August 16, 2024. He goes on to say, Laura seeks full review of all prior non-appealable interlocutory decisions, orders, and rulings by the Superior Court prior to the entry of final judgment. And the reason for that is because he's not appealing every single decision. It's basically, he wants the appellate court to be aware of the history of decisions in this case, because I believe he is making an appeal to state that Judge Mata has been biased, and she's been biased the entire time. And so that's why that sentence is in there. It continues on. He cites a case, Motley v. Simmons. Is it even the correct state? I'm assuming that it is. Arizona, it must be. Okay. So for the appellate court's benefit, Laura notes an obvious issue. The fee judgment does not contain the finality certification required by Family Law Rule 78C, and thus the judgment would ordinarily not be appealable standing alone. Nevertheless, in light of the unfortunately complicated procedural history of this matter, that's kind of his fault. Well, not really, because I think the defense did something weird where it's like they had filed a motion and then withdrew the motion, and there was a question about what were the tribal issues or whatnot. Nevertheless, in the light of the unfortunately complicated procedural history of this matter, it is clear the fee judgment is final and properly appealable as a matter of right. The only reason he's even bringing that up is, even if, technically it's not a perfect final judgment for purposes of appeal, it's effectively the final judgment that's going to happen on that matter. Therefore, making it appealable, that's all that really means. This is so because this action involved a single paternity establishment claim, which was tried to the court on June 10th, 2024. On June 18th, the Superior Court issued a signed written decision, which fully resolves that claim. The under advisement ruling contained a finality certification as follows. So this is all just kind of the required stuff you have to say so that the appellate court knows that they have jurisdiction to make an appellate decision on what was a final decision of the lower courts. On July 12th, Laura timely files a pleading entitled Motion to Vacate Judgment, Motion for a New Trial, Motion for Altered or Amendment Judgment. This motion sought relief pursuant to 83A and 85. Accordingly, this post-trial motion automatically extended Laura's time to appeal from the June 18th. I talked about that before, trial decision. And he's again just stating law. Although the fee judgment entered in this matter on August 19th does not contain a finality, is again arguing semantics. Therefore, the fee stuff. All right. Again, because the procedural history of this matter is confusingly complicated, this guy has a really bad habit of being just redundant in his writing.
Redundant, repetitive, and he was one of the reasons why the procedural history is so complicated, is because he keeps filing a ton of things.
All of the motions that were filed specifically by his office, and even post judgment have confused the procedural history a great deal, no doubt about it. So in addition to her post-trial motion seeking relief under 83A and 85, on July 8th, Laura also filed a notice of change of judge for cause, and the following motion prevented the named trial judge Julie Mata from ruling on Laura's other pending motions. Yeah. See Arizona rule of family, whatever, explain after notice of change of judge. The named judge should proceed. Okay, get it. So on July 18th, while the notice of change of judge remained pending, the noticed judge issues a ruling. I remember that. And then she retracted it several days later. Judge Mata admitted this error, claimed she was unaware of the notice, and that makes all the sense in the world. But she rescinded it, and then it just got reflected back again. After Judge Mata withdrew her prior order denying Laura's post-trial motion on August 14th, the presiding family court judge issued an order denying Laura's notice of change of judge. The order authorized Judge Mata to rule on all remaining pending matters, including Laura's post-trial motion. I guess I could sort of see why this is so long. He has to get through all of these procedural, I don't know.
Does he though?
Does he have to? Yeah.
Well, you don't want your notice of appeal to be thrown out because they're saying, well, this doesn't look like a final decision of appeal. So you have to kind of just walk them through it. It's better to just be thorough than not. So it's forgivable. I know it's boring to read, but there's a reason behind it.
Because when I read it, it's like he's arguing against a position that no one has stated.
No, all he's trying to do is let the appellate court know that, look, there's nothing further to be decided. There's nothing further to be litigated about these issues. This is the procedural history. These are the decisions that were made. This is why it might appear that it's not a final decision. This is why this thing happened. But for all intents and purposes, these are issues that have been fully litigated. Final decisions have been issued, and therefore the court may hear this appeal.
Okay.
Because the interesting thing is we found the template form that they publish for appeals, and I linked it in private chat if you want to pull it up or not.
Well, I imagine it's pretty bare bones. It just says that, whatever, this is the issue on appeal. It's a lot shorter than this, I bet.
It's not even that. It says, notice is hereby given that name of party or parties, appeals or cross appeals to the Arizona Court of Appeals from the judgment entered on this case in the day of blah, 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 dated this date, signature of attorney or self-representation as a certificate service. That's it. You don't have to explain jack.
Nope, you do not. But in the off chance that this might get thrown out on a notice of appeal and you forever lose your ability to file an appeal because the time has passed, it makes sense to just kind of have these discussions, which is why he even filed an amendment just to make it completely clear. It'd be the most stupid, embarrassing thing ever to have this high profile of a case get thrown out after a defective notice of appeal for failure to make a case, that this was all based on final decisions in the litigation. So I guess, it's smart to do it that way.
So he's doing a recap. He just is using too many adverbs.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to dunk on Gingras, but I'm actually giving him some grace in reading this because I kind of see what he's doing. He's just making sure that everybody understands he's allowed to do this. That's all. That's all it is. he might be a little more verbose in how he approaches it, but that's just a style. It's a legally sufficient, and I get it. It serves a purpose. So accordingly, by awarding fees to respondent, the trial judge necessarily denied Laura's post-trial motion for relief. Therefore, and again, this is his point, pursuant to Arizona rules of civil procedure, fee judgment is appealable because it constitutes a signed written order resolving, the same stuff we've been talking about. In the alternative, even assuming the fee judgment was not otherwise appealable, this case fits squarely within the Arizona Supreme Court's rules explained in Barassi versus Madison, which was an Arizona case, allowing for premature appeal brought before entry of final judgment, explaining to avoid these judicial gymnastics and yet arrive at the same result. We hold that a premature appeal from a minute order in which no appellee was prejudiced and in which a subsequent final judgment was entered over which jurisdiction may be exercised need not be dismissed because it might not be a technical, for lack of certification of final order, be thrown out. So I guess that makes sense. I don't know how big of a thing that is over in Arizona appellate courts. Maybe they're pretty strict about it, which is why he's taking this approach.
The one thing I did notice reading the original notice of appeal and the amended one is he's not citing federal law for any of his things. He's going only to Arizona law because he has a history of trying to include law from other states or federal rules.
Well, you can't do that shit in appellate court. They're a little bit more stringent with that. And so you don't want to be quoting incorrect, inapplicable law. And so he's minding his P's and Q's, which is what, honestly, that's the standard for appeal. So, but yeah, he's very famous for not knowing how to, for citing Minnesota case law for an Arizona case. All right, so here, no time extending motions remain pending. Thus, despite the narrow scope of Barassi, the law remains clear. He's just making the argument I could appeal this. So, viewed in full context,
Minnesota is home of the Twins.
Yes, it is. Kirby Puckett and Jack Morris. 1991, anybody? Oh, you guys don't even know about the 91 World Series.
Nope.
I was, Bruce should know about the 91 World Series.
Oh, yeah.
The greatest World Series ever played.
I was but a wee lad.
That was Kirby Puckett, Ron Gant, Jack Morris. I think I want to say Greg Maddux was in there at that time. I'm going to start talking about like 90s baseball. If I
sounds right.
All right. So viewed in full context, it is clear the fee judgment necessarily and finally resolved Laura's post-trial motion by denying all relief Laura requested. So put simply, all right. In other words, I could appeal this. So by doing what it did, Superior Court made its final decision clear. He's already stated that now 5 times. All right, now it's getting a bit much. For that reason, there is no reason for any additional judicial gymnastics in the trial court, nor is there any reason to allow any further time or opportunity to persuade the Superior Court of its error so that the court's ruling on a pending motion may cure any error. All right, we get it. And then he signs it lovingly, David Gingras. He filed an amended notice of appeal, just kind of shoring up some things, and it was a lot of the same stuff. Just to be clear, this is definitely a final judgment on the underlying case, and so I can definitely appeal this. That's what that was about, and that was all it was about. And so what's the big update? Nothing other than this notice of appeal has been filed, and it was timely, so there will be an appellate brief of some sorts, and it will be no doubt entertaining. I'm actually really, really interested in how Gingras writes to the appellate court, assuming he's going to be the guy writing the brief. And we'll see. Give it a good 2 to 3 months. I don't know what the appellate time limit is over there in Arizona, but he's prepping the appellate brief right now. He's limited to only evidence that was presented at trial, and nothing new.
So when you
thought it was 60 days, am I wrong? In Arizona?
Yeah, it's 60 days in some jurisdictions, 90 days in others. Some places it's 30 days, just depending on the body of law.
Oh, okay.
But 60 days is pretty standard. That makes sense. Sure, let's call it 60 days. There's certain exceptions to that. If you need more time, you'd have to like file a motion to do that. But yeah, for right now, that's all that was. That's all that is. There's nothing new. And in essence, that's what it is.
When you say that only evidence presented at trial, does that include or disclude the serious motion practice that was filed prior to that, or is it
But should
only
include, because he even asked for a review of all of the underlying decisions that went into the final judgment. It gets the entire appellate record is based on all of that, and assuming that his appeal is going to be based on judicial misconduct, all of Mata's decisions are going to be looked at, if not for appealable reasons, to establish a pattern of prejudice towards Laura Owens in the way that she ruled. And so all of that is going to be for debate. Is he going to get very far with it? I don't know. I guess he's going to give it the old college try. But yeah, they're going to be able to look into all of the evidence that was admitted. That means all of the exhibits, all the attachments. At trial, I want to say that they adopted all of the previous pleadings anyway. And so it's all part of the trial record that the judge was able to rely upon when she made her final decision. So all of that is going to be up for review. So that is the Laura Owens thing.
But do you have a bet?
To,
like, do you think this is going to go anywhere? Or
do you want me to put money? You want me to put odds on it?
Well, just your opinion. Like, I understand the procedural facts, but what do you think personally?
I know that MG Law, when this was a thing, when Gingras was trying to create appealable issues, me and him were of the same opinion that this isn't going anywhere. There's not any appealable issues that we could see. And I think that we were right, because if you notice how Gingras has treated this post-trial, everything that he's done, this crybaby stuff that he does, talking about Judge Mata and trying to like rile up the crowd, and he's basically trying to troll the JFC crowd. He's definitely trying to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And there was purpose behind it, because he was trying to say that Judge Mata was part of the JFC crowd or influenced by the JFC crowd, and as they go, she goes. It was all that. The only lightweight appealable thing that might have happened was the fact that, that one mistake about the testimony, that the judge or the witness didn't actually say that thing that Mata relied upon in the judgment. But even that was so tangential to the actual merits of the decision to be useless. And so, no, I don't believe his appeal is going anywhere. I think it's going to die a swift death. In my opinion, I don't even think that it makes it to final oral argument.
Really? You think it'll just be taken on the briefs?
I mean, I don't know how much they're influenced by high-profile cases, but I'd imagine if this was just a normal case, it would not make it to oral argument. In California, anyway. I don't know how what the percentages are over there in Arizona, but in California, I think this would die a swift death on the appellate brief floor.
Well, even if it does go to briefs and dies, he's not going to let it stand. He's going to say that do you think he'll take it to the Supreme Court if it does get denied? Even
I think he probably is going to try. He's certainly going to try. I don't see this. I mean, of all the Supreme Court cases, could you imagine this stupid case getting all the way argued to the Supreme Court? Shit.
Supreme Court of Arizona, not the federal Supreme Court.
I know, but when you say Supreme Court, I imagine the big dogs up there. I'd imagine he'll try it. I mean, why the hell not? Milk a lure for all the money he can, I guess.
Can we go to the federal Supreme Court? I want to hear NPR talk about 2 blowjobs.
Oh, I want the appellate court. I want her emails recited on the Supreme Court floor about the tightness discussion. I think that deserves a bigger audience.
I pulled up Arizona Rules of Civil Appellate Procedure, and it says the appellant must file an opening brief within 60 days after the appellate clerk mails or otherwise distributes an initial notice under Rule 12B.
Yes.
There we go.
So whenever
we'll
that
get something
happens,
this year.
I wasn't listening to what you said because I was reading the comments, and then Jennifer's over here talking about tight vaginas.
60 days after the appellate clerk notifies or distributes the initial notice.
Oh,
very good.
And then answering brief is 40 days after that.
Yeah, 60 days. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if it went to oral arguments, because I'd imagine that would be recorded somewhere. and then it'd give more content to do this Owens stuff. But yeah, that's all Laura Owens was. I've spent 24 minutes on it now, which is more than I cared to. Do you all have any more pressing questions about this appeal stuff? Because it's pretty basic.
Nope.
All right,
doing the waiting game.
Let's
I noticed
talk
that
about eating dogs and cats.
we
need our transition music.
The
Fail.
chat is members only, so I don't know if that's an intentional thing or.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm gonna open it up then. It was members only because I have to create members only content because I made my channel like a membership.
Right.
You know what? Why not? Let us open it up. I'm gonna open it up to everybody so everybody could participate. I don't want anybody to be behind a paywall for this show. Usually it's something I would ask Dominic to do.
Yeah.
But since I'm by myself and he has not responded to my text message because he's probably over there making a ham sandwich. All right.
And your side piece doesn't have enough power to do that.
Or he's very sad and he's dyeing his hair back.
He's going through his growing pains.
Yeah.
Oh, he is a growing boy, that's for sure. He's put on a lot of weight since that first picture that I was clowning him on the Instagram thing. All right, so it is now open up to everybody. Whoever wants to join in, just come on in. Come on in. Have a good time.
We got to bulk up for winter.
Yeah. All right. Could I play my transition music now? I got to close some of my tabs. I'm getting lost in all of the tabs I have open. I'm trying not to close the StreamYard tab. All right, I'm good. Calamity Jane says, yay. I feel included from the UK. She says, hello, what's up, Calamity Jane? What a name. Somebody's got to gift her a membership. What's up, Garlic Man? I ain't seen him in a long time. It's good to see you, man. I hope you're doing well. Oh, look, I put Bruce's comment up on the stream just because it was the next in line. All right. So cats and dogs, man. What do you all think about the I know what Bruce, well, I'm actually really curious about Bruce. Okay, here's my take. Completely objectively speaking.
Don't let the Haitians see your cat, Bruce.
I know.
Oh, I have cats.
Well, I'm working on a bit. How blue can this chat go? I don't know. We've already talked about tight.
What's the in between red and blue? Purple?
Yeah.
What's the
look at my background is purple, so
that's
here
good.
We go. I'm representing all undecided voters. Okay. My initial thoughts. When Harris was selected to be the Democratic nominee, I was so disappointed because I could never envision, even going back to like 2019, could never envision a time where I would ever consider voting for Kamala because I really didn't like her. And at the beginning of the debate, all of the things that she normally does that really annoyed me, and even like throughout the hour and 45-minute debate, she still does some of those things, like the condescending looks. Some people liked the facial gymnastics that she was doing. It really just got on my nerves because, like, okay, we get it. You were appalled that he thinks that you're a Marxist. I understand the whole hand on the fist thing. It was like it's being a bit much. It's like when they teach you in law school, when like you're on the trial team. They try to get you to shy away from all of those histrionics because it's distracting. But, you know, she did it and to great effect. I mean, most of the people didn't have a problem with it. So fine. She really stumbled during the first 10 minutes because she had to get, you know, her nerves or her feet under her. But once she did, then she trolled Trump on the rally size. All bets were off. And then it was just, I was telling my wife, this is the most disastrous debate I've ever seen Trump in. I've never seen him worse. Like he's always like just, you know, crystal, you know, cool as a cucumber. Can't rattle him. He's like the rattler. He's never the rattle. But for like the next hour and a half, it was just kind of off of the rails. And so for an undecided guy like myself, I was really interested in policy. But what I feel that I got mostly from Trump was a lot of fear mongering and name calling, which is what we've all come to expect. It's why I was tone deaf to when Bruce, you had called out, like, what do you think about the moderators? Oh, I thought they were fine. They fact checked Trump about the cats and dogs thing, because that was like a preposterous thing to say. It's like, what in the hell are you talking about? Now I know now the origin of that clip. You had pointed out that
Oh, really?
Springfield, Ohio thing.
Oh, you figured it
But
out?
come to find out, it was total bullshit. It was like some.
Well,
Wait,
I mean, I was.
What do you mean bullshit? Because he's mute here. He's stuck.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. And then I lost my place. I'm trying to fix my sound over here. Let me just. There we go. I think that's better. Hey, Bruce, say something.
Well, I mean, I was working on a bit where I felt a little sorry for Donald Trump because, just because people like to eat pussy, it doesn't mean they're going around eating cats and dogs literally. It just means they're horny.
That's good.
That is the kind of intro I would expect from Bruce Morgan.
There you go. Dave taught me well.
I was expecting to hear some policy. You cannot. Okay. Every time I ask for what is Trump's policy, well, it's on his website. It's like, I don't want to read his website, man. I don't got time for that shit. I'm not going online to read his website. I'm not going to read Harris's website that was written by other people, staffers or whatnot. I need to hear it from the candidate's mouth. One thing that was very crystal clear to me was that Trump was unprepared. He didn't know what his policies were. He didn't know that he had supported the in vitro fertilization thing. When Harris had attacked him on that, he could have had, I just signed a thing, or like signed off on a thing where supporting for IVF treatments or whatever. He could have just said that. I don't even think he knew he did it, or that he had advocated for it. In the whole healthcare debacle, where I don't have a plan. I have concepts of a plan. You're just going to have to vote for me to figure out what it's going to be. It's like, no, man, this is not like 7th grade, like science class. I need you to be able to articulate what your plans are. Now, look, it probably doesn't matter because everybody's got super teams and they're going to implement whatever they're going to do. It doesn't matter, but optics matters to me. And if the president can be so easily thrown off track because somebody makes fun of his hand size or his rally size, I'm expecting this guy to like go with the world's leaders and like stand up to Putin and like just show him what's for. Like, I know he has like these love letters to all these people, Kim Jong-un or whatever, and he says, I'm just gonna go over there, I'm gonna make a deal. If it was left up to me, I'm gonna end all of the wars. But he doesn't have a plan. He just says that shit. And so me, having been conditioned to listen to Trump for 8 years, know that that's just how he's going to say. It doesn't matter what you say. Hey, I make the best eggs ever. You'll never taste better eggs than me. You just scramble them like this. And I tell you what, I gave them to the Queen of England, and she said that they were the best. You never imagine. And he embellishes. He does that kind of thing. When you look for substance is where he gets in trouble. When you force him to stay on substance, that's when you get frustrated with him. And I think that the whole reason he lost in 2020 was simply because people were tired of that shit. Now he's going up against a very beatable candidate in Harris, who was just making facial gestures at his whole time, the entire time, and trolling and baiting him into going off track. And she was very successful in doing that. And then, but she did really well because even though it wasn't all that detailed, she found ways to sprinkle in some remnants of what her policies are going to be. I didn't hear her talk about the price gouging thing. I didn't hear her talk about the what was the one where they're going to unrealized estate tax?
Unrealized tax.
Yeah, I didn't hear her explanations for that. I was looking forward to that. But she at least said something in the time and space that she had. I was very disappointed with Trump's January 6th rhetoric. And I had fully expected him to go, because he had just gone on the Lex Friedman podcast. And then he goes on. It was the first time I'd ever heard him openly admit that he had lost the election. Now, we know, because of records, that in the time that he was challenging across all 50 states the results of the presidential election from 2020, that he was secretly telling his staffers and people that, he was acknowledging that he lost. He's going to say, I was being sarcastic, or I was like talking, extra literally, because that's the state of the voter count or whatever. But he says it on the Friedman podcast. I'm expecting him to own up to some of that and just make some base general acknowledgments that, yeah, sucks. I lost. I got 74 million votes. And he kept on saying that was more than any other sitting president ever. It's like, but except for Joe Biden. That's like the easiest retort. What are you talking about? Biden got 83 million, but it was bullshit. It's like, oh, with this stuff again, his inability to take ownership of him screwing up. I think that a lot of people would simply forgive him if he could just like be an adult about it and say, you know what, I effed up. I shouldn't have done what I did. I shouldn't have riled up people the way I did. It's unfortunate. People lost their lives. It was a disgusting day for America. There's a lot of people that are affected by it on both sides. Republicans deeply entrenched in red left that day in fear of their lives because of what happened. It was a stain on American history and voter election history. And I deeply regret it. Would I have handled it differently? Yes. I think it's important to uphold all of the tenets of democracy that the Constitution was founded upon. I don't know. It doesn't have to say exactly like that. Let's say something like that. Just say something. But to carry on with, there's so much evidence. I didn't have standing. Could you imagine not having standing as the president of the United States and he's going on about this? Like, okay. But when he starts talking like that, people like me start to tune him out with like the biggest unannounced internal eye roll ever. And it's frustrating to listen to. And if I've ever wanted to vote for Donald Trump, this would be the year. He just had to show me that he could sit up there and learn from his 8 years of being the president, because experience wise, he's been there for 4 years and he was making some good points. Oh, what? So you're just going to go run a Congress? Oh, sure. You're going to do this and that. You're going to go to Congress. You're just telling them to work it out. And they're going to vote for you totally. Like that spoke to me like a man that that had experienced that. And that's what I was looking for. That was good. He scored points, but then he let it go by talking about all the nonsense. And look, if you are a fan of Trump, there's nothing that he can do or say that's going to get you to change your mind. He could have called her the N-word and people would be like, no, it's fine. He's just being Trump being Trump, whatever. People that are in favor or have already predisposed to vote for Harris, same thing. It's the moderates, that like 12% of undecided voters that you're fighting for that are going to maybe give you a boost in these swing states. Oh, and by the way, hey, did you know that yours and my votes don't really matter, Bruce? Because I think that of the three of us, Brad is the only vote that matters because he lives in swing state Michigan. What do you think of that?
Right. With a lot of electoral votes.
See, that's the weird thing is Michigan is considered a semi-swing state, but it went red in 2016, but it went blue in 2020, and it was a weird anomaly. And you know, regardless of your opinion of how the 2020 election went, because that's the thing is that the state politics are largely dominated by three big cities, or well, 3.5. You got Grand Rapids, Lansing, Flint, and Detroit, and the metropolis surrounding it. There's a lot of land out there that feels unrepresented because of the population differences between the larger metropolises. So it's in the same way that we talk about how the larger states get a significant portion of votes in certain areas, but then they feel like they're being dominated by Wyoming and Idaho, and even though those states really don't change electorally, they still feel like they're restrained by them because their votes have significantly more weight than their 50 plus members in the House of Representatives plus their 2 senators.
Hey, Nancy, I don't know what they're talking about. That Trump claims no one died.
He said it on the stage. He said Ashley Babbitt died, but she shouldn't have been shot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because he did say that on stage. That lady died because he said because of that maniac cop. It's like, see, it's like, what was the cop supposed to do? It was like it was a unhinged mob. They were crawling the walls of the state capitol and trying to break in. What did they think was going to happen? What would you prefer the cops to do? He said that. It rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know, Bruce. Jessica said that you are looking mighty unhappy as I'm speaking.
Not Bruce, Brad. That's the second time today, Omar.
All right.
do the same thing with Lauren and Laura Owens. I
Yeah.
just,
It's
I
all
don't
right.
know, man. I'm autistic. I don't know what to tell you. It's just
No, you were giving your opening monologue on that, and I was listening intently, and apparently my listening intently face is also my mean mug. So
you got RBF. You're just gonna have to live with. Hey, my
I
wife's
have an
got the same
alarm in
thing.
my head that makes me think about the N when I say Laura versus Lauren.
I don't have it. I see L and I just whatever happened. You know, I do the same thing with my kids, Oli and Abby. I switch up their names all the time. Abby, I mean Oli. Oh, it's it's never gonna get better.
that's good.
All right. So you've had a couple of days to digest, Brad.
Mhm.
What do you think about your candidate's performance?
I still think that my comments are largely the same as what I did on the debate stream. Is that Trump did the best that he could, and one of the things that I think speaks to what you were talking about is Trump was fiercely looking at the moderators. Outside of a couple glances towards Harris, he wasn't looking at her if he could help it. Whereas
Right.
Harris was looking at him like the entire time that he was speaking. And then you get the facial expressions. Then you get her trying. And one of the interesting things that I had noticed in the very beginning was that the moderators forgot that they had agreed that both candidates should be muted while the other one is speaking during their allotted time.
I thought they were doing that. Did they screw that up?
That was a part of the agreed rules. But in the very beginning, she was able to interject on him over the microphones. But then they were like, "Oh, we shouldn't do that," and then they've properly muted him. But Trump speaks so loudly that he can get picked up even by the microphones on the other podiums.
And
he was shouting the entire time. The entire debate, he was like yelling.
I think the microphone discipline for both candidates was it could have been better, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it worse. Like we saw the first debate between Biden and Trump, which is the reason why we have this rule. When they kept trying to talk over each other, and Trump was basically trying to bully Biden, and that whole thing. Then they come back with this other debate where we're going to mute your mic when it's not your turn. Now it's just, I guess that's just the rule now, I guess.
Well, which is funny because Harris was trying to get that rule removed because she wanted to interject on him.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's bad form, and it's frustrating to listen to. I hope they keep the rule in place.
Yeah, I think it's a good rule.
Or at least allow, okay, somebody can talk, somebody can have a rebuttal. You have some time for that, and then just stick to that, and then kill the mics otherwise.
I'll tell you what was most frustrating to me was how neither one of the candidates, for the most part, were answering the questions that were asked. Some of the questions were kind of stupid.
Yeah.
There
was a lot of digression. There was more digression than Dave Neal. That's a big sign.
I'll tell you what, there was multiple times where Trump was just so off put by whatever Harris had told him about, where he's just like, you know what, I got to respond to the crowd size thing. Everybody goes by crowds, and you have fake AI crowds, and there's nobody has bigger crowds than me. He started doing that whole thing, and then just forgets about the entire question. They tried to bring in race to the debate, which I was kind of proud of both of them for just saying, I don't give a shit who she wants to be, she could be. And then I don't even think that Harris had responded at all. I was like,
no, she didn't.
Yeah, and I'm pleased. I was upset that they even went there, but I'm glad that nobody really.
Yeah, I think that's one of the places where she kind of got into this rambling, sort of stumbling, long-winded answer. And I think if she had just kept it tight, there were a few times, but one of them was the one where they were talking about race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she starts talking about Central Park 6 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And
I don't like that.
she just takes the answer way too long, and it's very rambly. If she just had a very nice, concise statement about her position or her thoughts, and then just left it at that, I think she would have done a much better job.
I agree with you. The whole Central Park thing, she didn't need to go there. I mean, it was in 87, and Trump had, I thought, a really good retort. At that time when I said that, they had pled guilty. So what do you want from me? If somebody pleads guilty to a murder like that, they should get the death penalty. I defend the Eighth Amendment. That's all he had to say. But he was going on about, that was one of my least favorite Harris moments for sure.
It's
I don't know.
I would say it wasn't like a O.J. Simpson thing where everyone thinks you're guilty and then you get off. It's like people truly thought that they were guilty.
Yeah.
And the judicial system corrected itself because it got it wrong. But, that's how these things play out.
And it was like, gosh, there's so many documentaries about the Central Park Five, but the way that all went down, I mean, the entire country was coming down on those folks. It wasn't just Donald Trump. It was like the entire country. It was like this highly politicized true crime story from like 1987 or whenever it was.
Well, even if she had talked about something else, I just thought it was entirely too rambling and long-winded.
Yeah. Well, I thought she did that there, and at the very beginning, she was trying to get her points on the economy, and it just wasn't landing, and it was falling flat, and like her mouth was kind of dry. She was kind of stumbling around, and at that point, Trump was just looking like he's been there before, and he was kind of kicking her ass for like the first 10 minutes. In terms of optics, is like this guy is prepared. He knows what he's talking about. He's not stumbling over his words, and Harris was kind of meandering over there with her response, and then she kind of found her ground. But I don't know, Bruce. What do you think? Who do you think won the debate?
I mean, I don't know. Quantitatively, I don't know how to assess these things. Like, if you just ask me who I thought won the debate, I would say Harris.
That's a subjective thing. I mean,
even though there were these moments I'm pointing out where she was kind of rambly and I thought she could tighten it up, snip it up. And it's interesting hearing your take about her facial expressions or watching him, because I thought, I'm watching on NBC, live stream YouTube while we're playing poker on the other screen.
Right.
And, all you get is these two cameras that are there the whole time. So it's like, I want to see, a little emoting, a little bit, and did both of them take it too far? Because I saw him do these crazy, weird looking eye rolls. And I'm like, what is this? What is his weird eyebrow raise? Like,
I mean, if you think about it as a performance with Hillary, and you like some of the gifs of him are his facial expressions to things where he's getting asked about or confronted about. So those moments can be good.
Yeah.
But going back to Harris for a second, did any of you guys check out her eyes during it? Her eyes, they seemed overly glassy. Like she was like on the verge of tears. Like, it was really weird because she spoke and she's trying to appeal with emotion in a lot of her arguments, which is fine. It's something you can do.
Interesting.
But the one thing that I kept going back to is looking at her eyes, and it just, for whatever reason, seemed like that she was on the verge of tears. It could have just been the lighting too.
Yeah, because from going on the stage or being in the green room on these stand-up shows, there's lights that are so bright coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like Dave can't see the people in the front row practically.
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
So if you're using eye drops or something, I can totally see that happening.
Yeah. That happened to me today in court. I was in court and I don't know what was up my eyes, but they were like watering for some reason. I didn't have eye drops, didn't have anything. It was just like freaking the outside air, I guess. I don't know. I didn't have an explanation for it. It just was what it was, man. I had to roll with it. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
About I thought you were gonna go I don't think that she was on like any substances, but I'll tell you what, I think Trump obviously was. He was cocained up to the gills, man. Come on now. I've seen
cocaine?
That guy.
I don't know about cocaine.
Whatever his drug of choice. All I know is that guy was a completely different guy from his campaign rally. Man. Which I don't give a shit, man. Give him whatever they did the same thing to Biden last year. Or
I think he would have done a lot better if he had the Cuervo Gold.
Hey, he just needed to chill out a little bit, man. He just
fine Colombian.
A nice shot of I don't know, some Dalmore 25 or something. Just cool your jets.
I don't know.
So I remember this article came out 7 months ago about the Trump White House pharmacy improperly dispensing medications, and it said that from 2017 to 2019, the unit spent almost $47,000 on almost 9,000 unit doses of Ambien and $98,000 on 4,000 unit doses of Provigil. Now, Provigil is a stimulant, and if that's what he's using, then that would explain his demeanor.
Isn't that just isn't that like modafinil?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. I tried that out in law school, but I don't think that mine worked. I think I got a bogus prescription or whatever. Lots of people were Provigil. It's like the magic what's that one movie? The magic pill for students or whatever. Provigil, I could see him being on Provigil. That's not even like an illegal. I'm not implying that he was on anything illegal. I'm just saying that he was properly caffeinated for sure. He was ready to go. I do the same things when I come on my podcast. I'm sleepy, man. Towards the end of the day, I get sleepy and I need to wake up, especially like on a day like today. It's been like 100 degrees. Miss Tree Lady, thank you so much for the 2. She says that he was far too easily baited. She has shiny eyes. She did have shiny eyes and a shiny face. But my wife kept on talking about Trump had like his lower lip was like sweating. Like, what is that about? And like his forehead was turning purple. Like he was like turning all these different colors.
I didn't really notice that too much.
My wife notices.
I was mostly watching his eyes and his eyebrows. He was doing some interesting emoting.
She said, "You not implying? You straight up said it." I guess, but that's fair. I did kind of say it in a jokingly way, but I could see how you can. No, you're right. I said it. Let's just call it. He was on his Red Bulls. He had like a couple of them.
The topic that started this. What do you think about the moderator's performance in fact checking Donald Trump as harshly as they did?
Here's my opinion. This is what I've noticed in watching the coverage. If you were rooting for Trump, because let's be real, most people that have watched these debates are not doing it analytically. They're rooting for their candidate. And if you were rooting for your candidate and your candidate is getting fact checked, how come they're not fact checking the other guy? It's no different than you're watching a football game. Holding again. Do they see holding on the other side? I mean, it's like rampant. Give me a break. And then I think it goes, if you have to complain about the moderators, then you lost the debate, man. Then you feel really bad about your performance. And the reason why it didn't register to me in the moment as being like so egregious was because he was literally talking about eating cats and dogs. The killer Haitian immigrants had taken over Springfield, Ohio, and were skinning cats alive or whatever. And I know that you knew what that was, Brad. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I venture to guess that 99% of the people had no idea what the hell he was talking about, so it just came out hilarious. So when the moderator is like, "Hey, just nobody's eating cats and dogs in Springfield. That's bullshit." And they're like, "No, it is. I heard it on TV." He's like, "Well, the mayor or whatever said that isn't."
The city manager said that they have no credible reports of this.
Yeah, that's what they said. So the reason why it didn't strike me as like odd is because he said a ridiculous thing that I had no idea and nobody else knew what he was talking about. And I thought that was a fair fact-checking point. And then somebody else brought up, didn't he get fact-checked on the abortion thing?
Yeah, it was right after his abortion talk. The one lady said, there is no state, all 50 states, it is illegal to execute a baby.
Christine, I have to be clear. I'm not saying that the moderators did an A+ job. I'm just saying that while I was watching it, I didn't pick up on anything being wrong because I was myself like, what the F is he talking about? But afterwards, rewatching some of the highlights, I can see where the moderators were appearing to be ganging up on Trump. I do think that there's a lot of credence to that. But, every debate that I've watched with these moderators have all pretty much performed similarly, including Megyn Kelly, who moderated the 2016 debate. She was also, who is now like a Trump, an ardent Trump supporter. She was giving him a hard time during his debates with Hillary. And so I wasn't looking at it so much as, they're all ganging up on Trump. It's just like, it appeared to me, because I didn't know what he was talking about, like he was off the rails. And when they fact checked him, it's like, I want to know, was that a real thing or was that bullshit too? Okay, I got it.
I think it's better if you build it into the process before you start. If you say, hey, we're going to spend this many minutes on an answer, this many minutes on a rebuttal, this many minutes on fact checking, like, then I would be satisfied, because then it's sort of like you've laid out the process, you've defined the definition of success, and then you just execute to that.
Do you like throw like the red flag, like everybody gets 3 challenges? Like if you know that what he's saying is bullshit.
Yeah,
bullshit.
maybe
challenge.
maybe you have to have a 3 fact checks per quarter limit or something. The way the NFL has 3 timeouts per half.
I feel like that would do something to disrupt the flow of the debates.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it gives you the chance to do your commercial breaks and
you
some
go.
more Doritos. I mean,
There you go.
take
I-
you
I-
from the NFL.
I get where people are saying that the moderators were a little bit biased, but to be fair, when I went on Brad's show during the live streams, like, oh, I thought the moderators did a great job. Like, I feel like they were trying to be like a pretty even keel for both sides. But then I watched it again. It's like, okay, I get it. But I think it also speaks to the debate performance. Which side is complaining about the moderators? And like for the last 6 presidential debates, I feel like Trump has always complained about the moderators. So it's like it's expected.
But the weird thing I would say, or I would counter that, is in the previous Biden debate, the moderators did a much better job, in my opinion, of staying out of it, letting the 2 candidates do their thing, and not interjecting themselves into fact checking or doing something, because it's not it's truly not their job as moderators. Their job is to ask the questions to start the debate and to not one of the things that they talk about, and you're familiar with this, Omar, is in lawyering, is that for a lawyer, you want yes or no questions. You don't want anyone to be expositing on anything. You want yes or no questions to get to the point, because you've got a list or a destination of where you're trying to get to. And whereas in an open frame debate, you want them to be able to exposit on things, but they asked a lot of yes or no questions about things, and to clarify a position or something, because that's usually what it was. It'd be, what is your position on the Afghanistan withdrawal? And then you talk about it, and then you do a follow up, and you say, so are you saying that you really didn't do anything for the Afghanistan withdrawal, and which would be a yes or no question, but then no candidate is actually going to take that opportunity to answer yes or no.
Do you remember them fact checking Harris on anything? Timmy the dog says that they did fact check her on certain things. I can't remember where it would have been though.
They didn't do it in the same way they did with Trump. I think the only question that was asked of her was the flip-flopping of your positions.
Which, by the way, can I just say this for the record? I don't give a shit if she flip-flopped. Trump is flip-flopped too. All politicians flop their decisions or flip their positions at some point.
Here's the thing. If you can back it up with an explanation as to why, or some evidence, like I learned new evidence and now I think X instead of Y, that's okay. But if you just are sort of like trying to please everyone and you don't explain why and you don't bring up any new evidence, then that's where I have a problem. I
have a perfect example when me and Bruce, while I was like really properly lubricated, he was like debating on horse. Like, what are you talking about, Bruce? I don't even know. I'm not here to debate, man. I just said that.
You kept bringing it up. I was just playing poker, man. I was losing my money.
Oh. We lost to Pam.
We got swilled.
All my money every time.
I used to be very pro-life, and I've changed my stance just because I've changed. Pro-choice. I mean, I get why. I get it. It sucks, but I get it.
But if you need to explain that, you can, right?
Yeah. Yes, I could explain.
That's the only thing I'm looking for. If you can't explain it, I'm a little suspicious.
And
go ahead, Bruce. Brad.
I would say that the point in them bringing it up is when she was been in the primaries and she's trying to explain her positions, she was trying to give the farthest left positions in order to try and get the base around her, because you think about your Bernie Sanders, your Elizabeth Warrens, who are known to be on the farther left side of the political spectrum, and then she is expositing all of these positions that would align themselves and then some along that line, and then now she's reeling them positions back because she's trying to appeal to the moderates, but she may behind the facade still believe those things and is lying to their faces. And
Well,
that's where I have a problem.
I think that I would have appreciated an answer that says, like, look, I thought for environmental reasons that fracking was a bad idea, but I think that the current economic state doesn't lend itself to the freedom to be able to make that position anymore. So therefore, I reverse course. Something to that effect. Just something to show me that there's some logic behind it.
I didn't hear her say a lot of things like that. Yeah, with an explanation as to why.
I feel like if you made an argument like that, you could have very easily appealed to both sides. I think that she's afraid to give. I feel like she's trying to keep everything very centrist because that's what got Biden elected. Like he keeps on harping on the fact that she's a Marxist. She's this left-wing wacko or whatever. She's trying to avoid his ability to call her those things rather than just leaning into it. I don't know, man. She strikes me as a very centrist person. I think that she's going to do what most people want her to do. And if the fracking is what people want, and if that's what's going to get her voted, I think that she's going to put in policies that don't prevent states from fracking, which is good enough for me. She doesn't have to agree with it, but if she's willing to put those policies into place and then make sense, and there's some economic logic behind it, and there's an end game in place, then look, even a bad plan is better than no plan at all. It's better than I don't have a plan. I have a concept of a plan. And you're going to have to wait to read my book, or you're just going to have to elect me president and find out, but it's going to be the best Obamacare ever. It's like, what the F was that?
I'm glad you brought up that reference because that is still one of my favorites. Nancy Pelosi saying you've got to pass the bill in order to find out what's in it.
Oh, it's almost like the Office, that one interview where it's like, oh, I'm going to give you like 3 of my 4 plans to big company success. All right. And he gives off his 3. Well, what's the other one? Well, you have to hire me first. All right. It was a pleasure meeting with you. Oh, well, Jessica says, one of my favorite parts is people complaining that she knew the question. They both knew the questions ahead of time, didn't they? Wasn't that the thing? Like they weren't allowed notes. They had a notepad.
No, they weren't allowed to. They were. In the spirit of debates, you are not given sample questions. You're not giving anything. You have to go in with your debate prep team with zero knowledge and say, we're going to cram you full of these facts and you're going to try and make something out of it.
So it's like a bar exam. Look, you're going to get tested on 15 bodies of law. You're not going to know which ones. You just got to know everything. That makes sense. That also makes more sense why Trump was unprepared to give his healthcare policies.
Because I think I agree with Erica. They generally didn't answer the questions very directly anyway.
They did not at all. It was frustrating. I'll tell you what, I really wanted to hear Trump's response as to why. There was something else to ask. Well, the flip-flopping one with Harris was the big one, but the one with Trump was, why did he veto the bill to put like 1,500 extra
why did he push to get the border security bill banned? Because he wasn't in office, so he didn't have any actual executive power. He just had sway being the presumptive nominee going into the election cycle. But
he still pushed for it and didn't explain his position.
Yeah.
He didn't just answer it. He just started going off on this rant about other stuff that he got trolled about. I was disappointed that he didn't give a response, because what she basically said was he did that shit on purpose because he'd much rather run on a problem than a solution, which was a good line. I felt like it was a cheesy line and it was easily defeated, but he didn't answer the question. And so she won on that issue by default.
Knowing what I believe to be his positions, there was an easy answer to that question, but whether or not he was going to find it was a different story. And it was, I'm running on this policy of 0 illegal alien crossings on the border. And I'm not going to have the Republicans support a bill that allows up to 5,000 crossings per day at all, because it's not good for the country. And since Biden and Harris have taken office, 11 million people have moved across that border and been distributed throughout our communities. And that's a problem in his view and in mine as well. But
like that might have been a disastrous answer. It would have made sense in the moment, but it would have been easily defeated. It's like, so rather than get everything you want and rather than have this outright ban, which you're not going to get, you just choose to have no enforcement at the borders so that we're just wide open, which is counter to everything that you've ever said.
No, because it's not enforcement, because there's a relief valve mechanism in the supposed legislation that says if for whatever reason there's more than 7,500 per day crossings, that they then lock down the border to 5,000. And it's like, but that's not solving the problem. That's still letting people into the country that by legal definition are not authorized to be here.
Yeah, but people are getting in regardless. Better to have more security at the borders than less. And if we're not going to have an outright shutdown of the borders, which we're probably never, ever, ever going to have, unless like we're in the time of war, why would we put less security at the border, knowing that we have all these issues at the border that you keep on fear mongering down our throats for the last 8 years?
Because while he was in office, he was able to get the border crossing rate lower than what it currently is with the same amount of force. So only paying for more border agents now doesn't solve that problem. It just gives them the ability of having this option of having people legally cross the border, or I say legally, but allows these border crossings.
Those policies that he got to prevent crossings at the border was temporary because they weren't constitutional, the policies that he tried to put in place. He did those to appease to his people, and they were always going to fail because they were going to fail the constitutional test every time. And so he wasn't even effective in that regard because that was by itself a legally temporary measure. Hey, Miss Tree Lady, thank you so much for the 5. Before I forget, I don't got Dominic in my ear anymore. It says he rightly got checked on the ridiculous. I think they were listening for lies from him. Well, that's the thing. Like if you lie all the time, you're going to be more sensitive to the lies. And if you're saying like these ridiculously, spectacularly ridiculous thing, you're going to be opening yourself up to it. It's like when you're arguing in court and the judge starts yelling at one of the attorneys. There's usually a pretty good reason, is because their argument didn't go as planned, or they're saying just ridiculous nonsense about the law, or making these factually irrelevant arguments. And usually it's the sign of a bad attorney if they start saying, oh, well, you're never going to get anything over on that judge. And every single time he's like been blaming the moderators. I'm mad at Trump because I feel like I wanted more from him. And he just, rather than doing that, he relies on these personal grievances. My loudest laugh was, well, I have a, yeah, I did. I laughed out loud at that one. Not to cut you off, Brad,
No,
but
you're good.
what did you think about what I said about those measures that he put in place are no longer in place, and they can never again be in place because they were per se unconstitutional, and therefore they failed on their face.
I don't know what things were struck down by the Supreme Court, but he basically tried to get rid of asylum for a period of time, but even that was a temporary measure. He put a halt on it, but it was inevitably going to come back. So that affected the numbers. Okay, we can't have asylum, but once this time period ends, and they tried to extend it as long as they could, but once it ended, well, then everything went back to normal and nothing was done. Because I know the Remain in Mexico policy was lifted by the Biden administration on day one, and that and other and that's sort of the thing, is that the idea that the executive branch already has a significant amount of power because that's delegated to them in the Constitution, that they have the ability to enforce and control the borders of the United States. So the idea that for whatever reason, I haven't seen any Supreme Court rulings that would be detrimental to what Trump has been proposed. If I remember,
I don't think any of them really got that far because they were always defeated prior to getting there.
Because like Texas sued Merrick Garland and said, you're not enforcing the border rules already, so we're going to put up these barricades within the Rio Grande River. And Merrick Garland's like, no, you can't do that because you're interfering with the enforcement actions of Customs and Border Patrol. And it's like, if you were actually doing anything, then sure. But if you're not actually doing anything, then talking about this possibility of interfering with these measures means nothing. So, and Texas actually won on that one.
Hey, Bruce, what do you think about all this, man? You're awfully quiet over there.
What do I think about what?
I'm stepping on Bruce. It's my bad.
No, it's fine.
I'll tell you what, the most annoying arguments against either candidate, I'll tell you what, the one I hate the most against Trump is when they try to blame him for COVID. When it was like this completely unprecedented thing, like, oh, so whoever the other guy was going to be was going to do better. It was like this completely
Did
unprecedented.
they talk about that in the debate at all? I don't remember any of that.
They were saying, Harris brought it up in saying that we received a terrible economy, so we had to fix it. And it's like, no, the entire world economy was changed because of COVID.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about, Bruce. That specific moment where she said we inherited this terrible economy. I mean, it was terrible because we were like in the throes of COVID.
That's what all these politicians do. They try to create causation out of what is maybe merely or barely correlation, right?
Yes.
And that's where critical thinking is very important. You have to understand that correlation is not causation.
So I get tired of hearing that argument against Trump. I also get tired of hearing well, you've been in the White House for the last 4 years. What have you done? She's the VP, bitch. Like Trump has literally said, JD Vance, nobody cares about the vice president. Actually, he's not all that important. And but at the same time, you've been there for 3.5 years. You should have done something about it already. What's with you?
So is JD Vance important, or should Kamala have more sway in a executive office where the executive in chief is largely not there?
I think that the VP has for the last 300 years been there to mirror the wishes of the standing president and nothing more. They don't make policy. They don't make decisions. They're there as an advisor. They're there for support. They're there to do handshakes and go meet and greets and things like that. They're there to do specific tasks as ordered by the president and nothing more.
They have to break ties over there in
the
Congress,
Senate Pro Tempe.
Sometimes they have a really
hardly ever.
Task. Yeah. But yeah, for the most part, they're not making policy, man. They're supporting the president is what they're doing.
So do you think that trying to attach Kamala to Biden's economic record and say, if you're advising the president and you're having to run as what would have been his fill-in, because he should in theory have been the candidate standing at the podium.
I feel like if I'm going to give Trump a pass on COVID and the way that the economy was when Biden took office, I have to give her a pass on that, because I don't know how much actual decision making or sway she has or responsibility she has over structuring these decisions versus what Biden's support staff enables her to do. I just don't know. I'm giving her a pass because when she once debated, didn't she debate Biden, or am I misremembering that?
Yeah, she would have had to have debated him in the first primaries in 2020.
Back then, she had different ideas than Biden. I have to believe that if she gets in office, she's not going to mirror everything that Biden is doing. It's foolish to think that. No more than Pence would have mirrored Trump. It'd be completely different. They're two different people. Biden is not the same president that Obama was. He was never going to be. They're completely different. And so I just don't put any. I get sick and tired of hearing that argument as if it's like a thing. It's not. It's not what people think it is. That's my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What are you sick of hearing, Bruce?
I think it's less about like whether you're mirroring the president as vice president and more about, are you following a very strict party line in terms of policy, or are you going to do your own thing?
Well, I can tell you that from all appearances, Harris is not Bernie Sanders. She's not of the AOC vein. She's not of this extreme left-wing, woke, liberal society that people want to paint the blue states as. She appears to me like every other centrist Democrat that's come before her. She appears to not be very far off from Biden, but I'll tell you what, she also doesn't appear to be that far off from what Trump is proposing. Like there was even a point where I mentioned on your stream where Trump was like, oh, now all of a sudden all of her policies are mirroring mine. I might as well just give her a MAGA hat, because it's true. Like, the things they're proposing are pretty close.
I think when you get to you know, international policy, right?
Well, yeah.
Foreign diplomacy. My gaming friends were like, wow, she's sounding really hawkish right now. And I think that's part of that trying to appear more centrist, right, for the
Right.
voters.
Yeah, she's definitely been. I've listened to like who's the streamers that I listen to? There is I listen to Breaking Points. I love them because they got Kyle and Sagar. Sagar's like the
Yeah.
hardcore red state guy, and then the other one's the blue. And then her husband, not Pac-Man, whatever, I forget his name, but I listen to him, and he's like this one of these Bernie Sanders Democrats. He's really mad at Harris for not like going further left, and he's like, she refuses to go further left, and she wants to be the centrist. Like they're mad at her. They're mad at her
Yeah.
for not mirroring their policies. Which to me, I don't know. I understand why people are frustrated by centrists, but I also think that there's a lot of merit to not being part of one of the two extremes.
Well, at the end of the day, regardless of where you stand, you have to have some sort of compromise with other human beings in order to
Yeah,
get anything done. And if you
Yes.
abandon the compromise, then you're never going to get anything done.
Right.
But then we get to Overton window theory.
What's the Overton window theory?
So the Overton window theory is really interesting, and it talks about how a frame of discussion can shift from one way or the other. And say you start at a position of not the Confederacy. What was before the Constitution? I can't remember it now.
I missed like the last sentence that you said.
Prior to the Constitution, we had a founding document that didn't work out very well, and I called it the Confederacy, but I can't remember what the name of it is.
The Confederate Papers or something. What was it called?
Maybe. I mean, they took a lot of inspiration from the Magna Carta and all the
Confederacy.
Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, Articles of Confederation. So
there you go.
You had this document that said that you were going to be incredibly loose in the way that you were going to govern the states. And they said, well, this isn't working out so well. So then you get to that point, you get to Marbury versus Madison, and then you see this shifting of how executive and government authority goes. And if you keep moving down that line, everyone sees things through the window. And as the window moves, any viewpoint that's considered outside of the window at any point in time is then considered outside of common norm. Mm-hmm. So you take I've seen memes of this where you say you have Republicans, centrists, and Democrats, and then you see the Democrats running in one direction, and then they say, look how far right those guys are. And it's not because their positions changed, it's because this position has moved so differently in the other. And I'm using those figuratively for demonstration's sake. But it's the and I think that's where a lot of people, Dave Neal likes to talk about how it's not a far left or right, it's more of a square. And I like the square as well because it talks about, economic policy versus traditional liberalism versus authoritarianism. And that model gives a much better viewpoint as to where people fall on a lot of their issues.
Yeah, more variables can be more descriptive. Yeah. And these baselines can keep moving over time, right?
Give me 45 seconds.
No, you're good. So, surprisingly enough, Glenn Beck wrote a book about the Overton window, and that's where I learned about it. Is talking about because you think about a policy position. So we go to slavery. Back in 1776, slavery was common throughout the world, and then as people changed their position, then we eventually passed an amendment and said, no, this is not allowed. Mm-hmm. And if you were to say now, well, let's go back to slavery, I'm like, no, that's something we've evolved ourselves past. We do not think of people in that way. Mm-hmm. But you look at positions or even things like schools. before 1900, schools were either community funded or you had traveling teachers that individual families had to pay in order to be able to have a teacher.
Mhm.
And then we get into this idea that no, the government needs to provide schools and fund that. And then as we've had 100 years of institutionalized schooling provided by the government, people are wondering, is that even worthwhile? Well, not is it worthwhile, but more so, is the way that schooling is being provided beneficial in the same way that it was? Because for as much money is being spent on schooling, there are not noticeable increases in outcomes.
Mhm.
And if you keep throwing money at a problem that doesn't improve, then it's not a lack of funding issue. There's something fundamentally wrong about it.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about when Harris was criticizing Trump for the 200 Republicans, including Dick Cheney and all these other people endorsing her, and people that had worked for Trump that are now endorsing her because he can't be trusted and he's full of shit and all this kind of stuff. And then he's like, well, I fired most of them. They worked for me. They were terrible people. I fired them. And what you think about that whole line?
So, you want to go first?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
I can talk. You're not going to get me to shut up. So please make sure to either speak up or tell me to hold on, because I can go.
Go for it, Bruce.
I mean, I don't know. It all sounded very subjective to me, or qualitative. And I'm a real analytical guy. Like, I want numbers. So if you're going to tell me okay, we spent 4 years and we rototilled our staff in a corporation or the government or whatever, or we spent 4 years and we kept the staff the same, but they still underperformed. I don't know. I need to see some quantitative numbers. I need to see some data.
Well, I didn't deny.
I don't know. Anybody can make a sort of argument or a claim, but I have a hard time sort of giving it anything or even caring about it until I can measure it. And again, we go back to people conflate correlation with causation. It's very complicated. So I don't know. I mean, I think when Harris mentioned, him coming into the Congress floor and casting a vote, even though he was sick and all this, and he was dying, that was a very powerful moment because of the oratory way she did that. But that was about it.
Well, respect to the, what would you measure with her statement? If there was actually 200 or more or less, what are you measuring?
I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, where I work, we have, KPIs, and we have quarterly measurable objectives. And I think they don't do this enough in the government. In the government, political candidates, they make campaign promises, right? I think there should never be any promises. You should have a plan. And the plan can change over time. Every quarter, you might change your plan. But what are the KPIs, the metrics you're measuring? For example, in America, we measure GDP a lot to talk about whether America's doing well or not. I think some sort of quantitative metric about standard of living and what is the quality of life for the average American would be a much better KPI to try and optimize and increase over time and measure independently.
You seem to have a lot of thoughts, Brad. What are you thinking? What did you think when that was obviously a troll question, by the way? Obviously she was trolling him. And then he goes on this whole rant about how he fired all of them and they weren't very good. And I don't know. How did that grab you?
So in one way, I think it validates what I'm feeling, because one, for the Democratic Party to now be embracing Cheney as a stalwart person of moral character is very different than how they treated him 15 years ago.
Did you hear Jon Stewart's what he said about Cheney's endorsement?
I don't think I did, but I imagine it was pretty good.
No, he's basically like, yeah, fuck that guy. Multiple times he was not for it. F that guy. He could just go somewhere with all of that, take his endorsement and shove it up his ass.
It's like getting Jack the Ripper to be like, he donated $10,000 to this children's hospital. Great. That's so wonderful. He's only murdering people at night for, indiscriminately.
he was obviously trolling him, and it worked. But go ahead and finish your point, Bruce.
But
Brad.
so I think the idea. So if you remember, while Trump is in the presidency, for me at least, it felt like he was stalled out. Whether it was through the multiple congressional investigations, impeachment hearings, things like that, he stalled out in his presidency. And he frequently talks about the deep state, these people, these entrenched bureaucrats who are in the government, who are consistently fighting his constitutional authority to be able to wield the executive as he is allowed to do. And I think it gives credence to the idea that all of these people don't like what he's doing. It's like, okay, well, you're bound to follow him unless he's acting unconstitutionally. And if the House and Senate can't impeach and remove him for any alleged conduct, you've got to follow what he's doing. Because you're
about some of the people that he surrounds himself. Like, for example, what do you think about Stephen Miller? Wasn't he like on his cabinet back in 2016? That clown. What do you think about that guy?
I can't speak to Stephen Miller. I've seen him around. But one of the most interesting things was installing his daughter and her husband as basically permanent advisors in his cabinet. And I don't think that that's going to occur again this year, because I think that optically it looks bad. But one of the funnier things about the issue is that the things that they were pushing for through his office that he delegated to them seem to run counter narrative to what he actually wants to happen under the government. And one of the things recently that really infuriates me is the discussion around the Supreme Court ruling, because they're saying that
Are you talking about Roe v. Wade?
No, not Roe v. Wade. The ability of the president to act like an elected king, and they keep saying that they've bestowed upon him this ability to act like a dictator, and he says on day one that he's going to do this, and it says, and no, that's not how that works. The Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution gave that to the executive branch and said, yes, that is how things are supposed to go. It's not that he's going to be a dictator. It's that by function, he is a dictator, just elected. And there is a process that which he gets elected and removed each time. They're recognizing the executive authority that's inherently there. Whether a president chooses to use that in ways that could be framed like a traditional dictator, that, your Pol Pots, your Mao Zedongs, things like that. That's one thing to another, because you think about the character of people, even 100 years ago, and it's different than people now.
We should talk about the January 6th. What do you think about
before you go there, like, Brad, do you think this, like, when you have a balance of powers, and you have the Supreme Court that's like elected for life, or you have senators that can run forever, but you have a president that can't run forever. Are you saying that's where the balance is coming from? Yeah,
because by virtue of him being restricted to 2 4-year terms, if elected both times, that represents the political will of the entire nation in how they elect, because they want, if the country chooses that they don't like what he's doing, he's going to be out in 4 years.
Right.
But
so the alternative is, if you want to restrict that executive branch power, you need to do something like make Supreme Court appointments and maybe congressional term limits a thing.
I don't even know it's that. It's a matter of I don't even think that is, because I think it's a matter of you have to amend the Constitution to scope what the executive branch can and can't do.
Right. Well, I mean, the amendment process is there to make it a living document.
Right. And if you go back and read what the founders were discussing about the amendment process, they thought that it would be piecemeal in 20 years. but it largely hasn't.
Right.
So the idea that, we can spend a lot of time talking about what needs to happen, but I think one of the weirdest things is that this idea that if you don't like what's happening in the Supreme Court, then you just appoint more Supreme Court justices to get your way.
That's another
I don't want to be king.
alternative.
I don't want to be king. King would be boring, for me at least.
I don't know. I could see being like a Game of Thrones style king with the harem at your feet.
Oh my God, no.
Oh boy. You don't want to be the king in Game of Thrones because you'll be murdered in the next season.
Right.
You want to be Tyrion Lannister. That's the role model in Game of Thrones.
Didn't he die too? Tyrion? Wasn't he the one that like died?
Tyrion didn't die.
No, the short guy.
That guy.
Tyrion's the short guy.
Things. That's the role model.
I'm thinking of his dad, the guy that died on the toilet.
Yeah, because Tyrion killed him.
Exactly. You want to be Tyrion. You don't want to be king.
All right. The whole term limits thing, I mean, it's just so incongruous that you could appoint lifetime senators, lifetime Supreme Court justices, and the people that are electing them are very finite in their political existence as commander-in-chief. And it creates a situation where some people don't vote necessarily per se for presidents. They vote for political parties that will nominate certain ideologies of Supreme Court justices or whatever, which that was a big running point for Biden in 20 was one of the reasons, well, a reason among many that people felt, you know what, I'm going to elect this guy because I'm sick and tired of these conservative Supreme Court justices. It just creates other issues. I don't know. We talk about these balances of powers, but if you have term limits for some and not others, then it's not necessarily a balance of powers. The whole reason that Brad was talking about why we have term limits, because the state should have the ability to be able to get rid of somebody such that nobody gets to become a dictator. You have that, but then you don't follow it all the way through on every branch of government. Then it just, I don't know. It's an imperfect system is all. Which leads me to my next point. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I was going to say, I think term limits on Congress and senators works well because that is an area where getting frequent updates, and I say frequent because Congress is reelected every 2 years, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Senators, you get 6-year terms. I think if you went to 2 terms on senators, I think that would be beneficial. Or you do a combined thing of like you get 4 years as a representative and 6 years as a senator to show that you're upgrading yourself, and then you're continuing your knowledge of the process into the other body, and you have in your ability to pass that knowledge on to those who are more frequently being rotated in and out. I think that would be a better solution. But then in something like the judicial system, where common law, understanding and analyzing law, if you think that we should be reappointing justices because what stabilizes the government, I think, is the judicial system operating in the way that it does. Because while we may not like where it is at one particular time, the idea that these justices are there for a long term provides this idea that some founding and traditional ideas can stick, and common law understands that. We've been making small, minute changes to common law over a very long period of time. And if there's a case that can be brought up to where some precedent needs to be overturned, whether it's Roe v. Wade, whether it's Plessy versus Ferguson, all these different judicial decisions, you say at the point it was originally decided, it wasn't good. But now that we have more understanding, more thought around the process, we have the ability to be able to change that. And if we reduce that to now you get 2 8-year terms as a Supreme Court justice, just for argument's sake, or we'll say 10 years. You get 10 years as a Supreme Court justice, which feels like a long time, but 10 years can go by pretty quickly.
Yeah, it can.
I think what you will see is there will be an increase in politicalization of the Supreme Court in order to fit in that time frame, and then you're going to get the reverse of what you're intending for it to do in those justices now have to try and make their political stances known in order to fit with the times and then be able to effect change, versus the longer term cases where you get, let's say you get a weak case on Second Amendment issues and you go, well, does this actually pass muster, versus a more concrete case? Because I know that on the Republican side of things, you're going to see cases coming up where the National Firearms Act may be overturned because you may not be able to have a historical analog going back to meet the standards that were set under Bruin. But that case isn't there yet, but there's definitely a groundswell of legal challenges coming to that may end up causing that.
Well, yeah, so you've already seen that happen. Like when Merrick Garland was nominated Supreme Court Justice by Obama. What's that guy's name? The guy that's like almost dead.
Not Boehner.
No, the old guy with the droopy cheeks, like he's got the jowls.
Yeah, the guy who has strokes all the time.
Yeah, he freezes all the time when he's speaking.
Yeah,
I can't think of his name, man. But he's like, yeah, we're not gonna push forward Garland because he's gonna be out. Obama's gonna be out in a few months, and we're gonna let the people decide who they want to elect the next Supreme Court justice. And what was that all about? That led
Mitch
to
McConnell.
Mitch McConnell's who you're talking
that's
about.
the guy. Oh God. Yeah. Before I go down that rabbit hole, because I only got maybe 8 minutes before I start getting text messages from the wife like, hey, enough with your internet friends. You need to get your ass on home. You kind of got a sense for some of my thoughts on January 6th at the very beginning. I'm curious about what you guys think, specifically because I know Bruce that I know that you're a blue. I wanted to hear it from a genuine red. Like, what do you really think about the January 6th stuff? I know before you've mentioned some of the voter fraud stuff. You and I will never agree on that, by the way.
Okay.
But specifically well, if you could show me like a real. Only reason I say it is because I've looked. There was a time back in 2020 where I was actually looking for educational reasons about the voter fraud stuff, and I found nothing.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty well settled on that. But just for the pure American spirit, January 6th, a dark day by any measure. What are your thoughts on it? And what is your thoughts on Trump's opinions and what he said during the debate?
I think he was right in correcting the moderators in the way that they framed the question, because they're saying that, or they're implying that he incited a riot at the Capitol, which is not true by any stretch of the means. And
back on you before you go on, could I push back? Because the November election happens, get the results.
Yeah.
There is no transition of power, peaceful transition of power.
Yet.
For the entire time, he was talking about this is bullshit. The whole thing is a fraud. It was a fake election, fake news the entire time. He's tweeting months before January 6th, a couple of months before, about this kind of stuff. He's leaving tweets back, I think it was before he was banned, that you're going to show up on January 6th. Something big is going to happen. Something big is going to be had. He'd been riling up his base for a period of time, culminating in a speech that he gave at the Capitol, outside of the Capitol, that led to everything that we saw. He eventually gets on TV and like tries to tell everybody to settle down, but it was like an hour after everything began or something like that. And so I cannot accept from him, I can't accept the answer that he's not responsible for riling up, even if it was unintentional, because he certainly said and did things to rile people up and to doing what they did on January 6th. I just had to get that out before.
No, you're fine. So in my viewpoint, every losing party of an election going back to 2000 has said that they shouldn't certify the election, that different senators or representatives should stand up and try and deny the vote to be able to stop the certification process. They say that, they have reasons to believe that something fishy has occurred, and they get blown under the rug and nothing happens of it.
But inevitably they concede is the point. And Trump is still, it's like 4 years later and he hasn't conceded.
No, even during the recording of the voter slate, they have senators that go up and say, I object to this voter slate, and because of these reasons here. And who's that one lady from California? The black lady. I can't think of her name.
Oh, is she bald?
No.
Like no, I'm thinking of someone different. I don't know.
But did she die recently?
Barbara Lee? Maxine Waters?
Maxine Waters. I think it was Maxine Waters that has done that a couple of times. If I remember correctly. But so I think the idea of saying that, I don't believe in the election results, and whether you believe it or not, it's weird to think that the presidential candidate doesn't have a proper method of being able to try to investigate the voter rolls.
Except he filed, I don't know, however many hundreds of appeals.
Right.
And they were all thrown out by Republican Trump appointed judges for the most part. And in the one state where he did get a recount, in Arizona, not only did they find no evidence that he was going to win the election, but they found that the divide between Biden and Trump voters was bigger than they thought. They found more Biden votes than Trump votes in a Republican-led recount. And so all of the evidence that's ever been presented, tangible evidence, real evidence, has always pushed back on this idea that there was voter fraud. And all anybody's ever wanted from Trump, all most people have ever wanted, even from his own party, as far as I can tell, is just, could you just say that you lost? It's fine. People will forgive you. And he hasn't. And even now, like we're talking about the January 6th stuff, and they're asking him about it on the debate stand. And all we want is for him to show, look, that was a terrible day in American history. I wish I would have done things different. Had I known what was going to happen, I wouldn't have done it that way. But we still have to be mindful of, voter fraud and whatever else he wants to. There's a way to say that and still preserve the idea that America has a democracy, that you could rely on our voting system or whatever. But if it's his intent, and I've heard him say this many times, like, look, we won the election, so I don't have anything to say. He was saying this during Hillary. He was like, you know what? If I lose, it's all bullshit. If I win, they don't have anything to say because I won. And then he loses in 2020, and then he spends the next 3 months trying to figure out a way to stay in the office. And now in 2024, in a presidential debate, he's still harping on the fact that, I was being sarcastic when I said I lost by a whisker. Of course I didn't lose. And it was all bullshit. And it's all voter fraud and blah, blah, blah.
So I think getting back to the January 6th topic real quick, I think the idea that a sitting president cannot ask his supporters to come to a rally at the Lincoln Memorial, and then he says, I know some of you are going to the Capitol for your petition of grievances, and nothing about that should be faltered. Now, I do believe that there were hecklers inside the crowd trying to rile them up, and then everything that I've seen says that Trump did offer 10,000 National Guard troops to Nancy Pelosi, who would have been the enforcement arm of the Capitol building, to be able to say, I will give you these troops to help ensure things are safe. And she said no. She did. Her chief of security, of Capitol Police, it's been documented that they've turned down this offer of 10,000 troops. And the video that he talked about was her daughter getting video of her mother saying that she believes it's her fault because she didn't take that offering of National Guard troops. Now, people can choose.
Sorry, Brad. I got to respond to this.
No, you're good.
She says that he had affidavits. I do remember reading the affidavits. Matter of fact, I did a whole deep dive into what was it called? There's a documentary about the voter fraud thing with Trump.
The 100 Mules or whatever? Or
Yeah. Where there's like, look, we got irrefutable evidence, and they referenced some of those affidavits, and they said they had videos of like voter fraud. And I went in and I looked into the actual appellate briefs, and I looked into the attached affidavits, and I know what you're talking about. They don't prove what Trump is saying that they prove. They don't even prove what they were attached to the pleadings to purport to have proved. They don't say anything like that. They are affidavits by people to claim to have seen and done things without any actual evidence that they actually happened. It's no different than me writing an affidavit saying that, hey, I saw people over here across the street at this whatever courthouse walk into the pleading thing and remove a bunch of stuff or throw stuff on it. And yet they don't have any video evidence of it or anything supporting it. It's just my statement. There was a lot.
We have a couple great affidavits from Laura Owens.
I mean, look, an affidavit, all it is, it's somebody swearing that something that they're saying is true. But if that's all you have and it's absent any tangible evidence, you can't do anything with that in a voter fraud petition. And there were hundreds of them. It wasn't that they didn't have affidavits. The affidavits were not the problem. It was the lack of tangible evidence, which is the reason why virtually all of those got wiped out. I know there was a lot of standing issues that they were wiped out, but the ones that got to be heard on their merits, there were attorneys that were disbarred for bringing frivolous petitions, because you can't just make shit up. You can't just give this affidavits that say that they purport to be something and not back it up with evidence. What are you doing? You've been practicing for a long time, and there was a couple of attorneys that were disbarred for bringing frivolous applications. And so I know what you mean, but I know that there were affidavits. I've read them. And in my legal opinion, when I've been doing this a really long time, they should have never been brought as actual petitions. They were frivolous. And they were frivolous because Trump was out there for months championing this voter fraud movement, while in the background telling everybody that, yeah, I lost whatever, saying different things to different people. And so a lot of people went to jail for it. Some people got disbarred because of it. A lot of people have lost a lot of things because Donald Trump was never willing to concede. And here we are 4 years later, and all he had to do was say, look, even if I don't feel like I should have lost, I lost. And I respect the rule of law. I had my day in court, didn't work out. Here I am in 2024, trying again. But
that's not his personality, though, Omar.
I know, but I would appreciate it if he was just, for once, like, show some modicum of, responsibility.
You can't change people.
That is true. And he is 78 years old.
You just have to try and compromise.
Yes. Sorry, Soraya, I love you. I do. I know where you were going with that, and I've heard those arguments. I had to respond. I didn't mean to cut you off again, Brad. I really didn't.
Good. Yeah. But I think that so someone can believe something and say, I still believe that I was wronged. But the fact that there was a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th does not show that there was such an ingrained fear that he was wronged so badly that he was going to overthrow the government to try and stay in power.
Didn't he tell his VP to not certify the vote?
Yeah, he did. He said, I think you should do this. And Pence said, you know what I think of it? I think you're done and we're going to move on. And then he did.
Didn't he tell Pence that, you know what your problem is, Pence? You're too honest. You're too honest. I need you to decertify the election. I need you to do it for us.
I don't know about those, but
he did. He said that.
It's just diet coup. It's just 1 calorie.
But
what are you talking about?
I don't know about that one.
Well, no, Brad's argument is that he didn't do a real coup.
Oh, yeah.
And Omar, your argument is he's walking up to that line. So I'm saying it's diet coup, 1 calorie.
All right. I get it. 1 calorie. Fair enough.
I'll be here all week. Try the veal.
Right.
Yes, sir. Folks, hey, I think that we accomplished a red and a blue and a purple guy all sitting talking about a presidential debate in a very civilized way, and we're all still friends. and we love everybody in the audience.
Dang it, Bruce! How dare you?
I think that we've proven that it can be done. That we could talk about this stuff without being at each other's throats.
It's all good.
Have these intellectual.
No, it's good. I love you guys.
I really appreciate people in the comments. You guys were. I didn't see anybody getting crazy in the comments, which I really appreciate, given the incendiary topic of the presidential debates.
I don't know. Jessica's got it out for me, but I'll let it slide.
No, everybody's got their fans.
If anybody gets too crazy, Star will take care of them.
Sorella has it out for me. She doesn't like my non-acknowledgement of affidavits. I'm sorry, Sorella. I love you. I promise. I have reasoning. I have logic to support my positions. Anyway, folks, I love you all. And Bruce, Brad, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks for the invite,
Thanks,
Omar.
man.
We got to do it again real soon. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Very cool.